Here's my rack. Give you a brief overview of what we're working with. On top, we've got the surge suppressor. I've got 8 ports on the inside, 6 ports on the outside, 2700 joules surge suppression. That should be plenty for what we're working with here. Next, we've got the public switch. So this is serving everything that could be exposed to the internet, including the Plex server, Proxmox, if I decide to do that, TrueNAS, anything that I expose to the public internet or could be exposed is going to live on that public switch, on that public subnet. Next is the private switch, and that is all of my home devices, my wireless access point, all of my family devices. Then we have the first server. This is the router. This is going to be an OPNsense router firewall appliance. Below that we have the lab server. This is going to be basically just a Proxmox server spinning up virtual machines and containers to do whatever I want to do with it. And then that last chunk there, 4U space for the NAS. It's going to be an 8-bay shallow NAS. And we'll go over the details of each of those pieces of hardware in a different video. On the bottom, I've got a 2U drawer, and in here I just keep extra punch downs, extra keystones, tools, some patch cables. So what I've done here is I pulled my patch panel out. I've connected this line to the router on the LAN 2 port. This is going to be feeding the private switch. So on my patch panel, that's this port here. What I need to do is disconnect this from this keystone and reconnect this to the keystone. So this is about all the slack I want. I want to be able to pull my patch panel out about a hand's depth to work on it. So this has a little cover. It just comes off on both sides. Typically when you make a keystone patch panel like this, you don't ever have to take it off. We'll just rip those out there. So what we're gonna try and do is line these up. So first I'll unwind each of the pairs. Okay, we want blue and orange kind of on one side, green and brown on the other. We'll line this up and we'll pinch our core of our cord right here. I've got brown, white, and brown. And then I've got green, white is next. And then green. So I've got all of the lines where they need to be on this side. Come to the other side. And we need to bring orange across this way and blue down this way. The blue back around. Bring orange up through. Orange needs to be unwound just a little bit more. Blue. Blue, white. Orange. Orange, white. Now, this is almost done, but we need to punch it down. So this is the punch down tool. This side says cut, this side does not. This little tool will pinch that wire into that slot and cut the excess off. And it's an impact-based one. And then we take the cap, attach that back on here. And now this is a nice short cable. This will run from the patch panel, which is meant to connect patch panel to the router, and this will go, the other end will be plugged into the back of the router. Last piece though, I'll go ahead and plug a cable in here. take my network tester, got the remote end, and the test end. And I'll make sure that my patch was good. RJ45 cleared. Here's my patch panel. I've got these three set aside to go to the private switch. This is gonna be from router to lab to NAS. And I mean, network connections are going both ways, but that's kind of how I think about it. So this is the cable I just made. Pop that in there. We will go ahead and get a zip tie. This is a strain relief bar. And there you have it. First cable connected, and this will be going to the router on LAN 2. Now we'll do the same thing over here for LAN 1 for the private My Home networking. So that is the beginning of this patch panel. 2 cables connected. Put that on there. And what we have is 2 cables. All right, so this first cable is LAN 1. The second cable is LAN 2. And you can see we are nice and clean. Now this cable here will be WAN 1, and that will be coming from the first port in the patch panel here, which I don't have yet, but that is on its way. So once I have that, I'll show you that part. Okay, we're here at the back of the rack again, and now I have everything necessary to mount my KVM. This is a StarTech SV431 USB. And we have here is we've got a VGA out. This link is unused. They've said they had different plans for this unit and then didn't follow through on those. So we've got one out here, and then we've got, these are actually 4 in USB ports. What we're gonna have is we're gonna have this out to my monitor on a VGA to HDMI adapter, keyboard, mouse. One of these ports will be used to power that VGA to HDMI adapter, and then the 4th port will be left open for USB sticks and so on. And then we'll run a USB and a VGA to the router, a VGA and a USB to the lab, a VGA and a USB to the NAS, and then no VGA but USB back to my desktop computer as kind of a return channel. Perfect. So let's go ahead and get this mounted. 4 cage nuts. So these are just little nuts, and they've got a little wing on them on each side. And they slip here in the top and grab into the square hole to give a threaded mounting hole. This switch doesn't need its own dedicated power source. It will feed off of the USB inputs from the servers, but only for basic switching. Because we're going to be powering this, because we're transcoding that signal, we need to provide power to that IC. HDMI. This is going to run to an output on the patch panel. I'll show you that in a minute. But first, before I do that, let's get some more of these connections made. All right, we're back. Slight hiccup. Should be able to get over this. Female ends have threaded receiving ends, right? Nuts. Male ends have threaded screws. The back of my KVM, because they should have screws. These actually should be, if it's wanting to be female, these should be female receiving ends with threads. So the problem is, when you take your female end, focus, and you try and plug that in, you will not be able to because the nuts are in the way. Let's take the nuts off. The nuts don't come off of the cables. That's just unfortunate. They don't. They're, I don't know, permanently attached. I actually bunged up and broke this cable a little bit. The nuts do come off of this end, but once you take them off, the plate is loose. Luckily, I don't need this one, so I can leave those on. And in fact, I should probably do that on this end. Let me do that. The other hiccup is I ordered 4 small USB-A to USB-B, but that is USB 3B, I guess. It has an extra bit that does not fit into my USB port, so I have to order some extra cables. They'll be here tomorrow. So you run into hiccups, you buy the wrong thing, but it's okay. You move on, you continue. With this in place, I now have everything I need to continue with the wiring and cable management. So I'll show you what we're going to have. From the patch panel in there, on this far side, will be 2 RJ45 jacks. One for my personal computer, one for my work computer. On the other end will be another 2. Oh, I can do them just through there. One for the WAN, coming from the garage, and one for the home wired switch, which goes out from here, through the walls, up to my master closet, and feeds the whole house. Right here, we're going to have an HDMI port. That is the output from the KVM. So, we'll cable manage this out of the way. Not at the very current moment. We have HDMI out, so that I can plug that into my monitor. And then we'll have 3 USB ports. One for keyboard, one for mouse, and one for the return channel back to my computer. Okay, so what are we missing? We've got these 3 ports. We are missing the keystones that fit in here for the USB to plug those in. Hopefully Amazon finishes their trip and drops those 2 off. They are scheduled to be delivered today. We need to wire these and these, as well as the access point port. And we need the USB cables to go from here to their switch ports. We also need to power this, which is right here. So, all that and more in the next chunklet. All right, we're back at the back of the rack. Got the USB keystone connections. So we can go ahead and insert these. Okay. All right, well, I've got the wiring mostly complete, at least what I can do today. I'll give you an overview of how this works. So the internet is going to come in on this line here from the wall. That comes from the garage ONT, the optical network terminal, where my fiber connection terminates and my Ethernet begins. That runs under the house to the wall plate here in the office, and then into this port here. This runs directly into the WAN port of the router firewall appliance. That firewall appliance then feeds on the LAN port back to the front patch panel. Let's take a look at that. All right, so here on the front, this patch panel here and this port here are those two lines feeding the LAN. So this is the public LAN. This is anything that could become public. This then goes and feeds back to the lab server. This line feeds nothing right now, but it will feed the NAS server. Then over here on the private subnet, this comes back and feeds the access point, which will sit on top. This feeds a line at the back of this, which will feed my computer, and this feeds a line at the back of this, which will feed my desktop, my work desktop. And then this line here feeds back to the wall to take it to the rest of the house. Here we are back at the back, where you see those two Cat6 terminals that I mentioned, where the private switch is feeding back to my computer and my work computer. Those are where these two ports terminate, and they'll be plugged in. So everything that is not contained within this rack will be connected through this patch panel. And that brings me to the KVM. So with the KVM, we have VGA out, and that signal is being processed by a small signal processor to translate that to HDMI digital, and that terminates here. This will then feed into my monitor. That's being powered by a USB port on the switch here, which is why this, on the KVM switch, which is why this needs to be powered. And then the other three input USBs are coming here. So this will be keyboard, mouse, and then a USB key or anything else I need to plug in. And then on channel 1, that is returning the USB signal, these three signals, back to, I'll plug that into my computer. So if I'm on channel 1 and I'm on DisplayPort, I'll be seeing my computer. If I'm on channel 2, 3, or 4 and I'm on HDMI, I'll see the output from these computers. Servers, I should say. And that's what we have here. We have the two VGA lines feeding 2 and 3. 4 will come soon when we build the NAS. And in the mail tomorrow, hopefully, will be the USB cables to connect this line to line 1, this server to line 2, and this server to line 3. And that's everything.